Everyone, welcome to this webinar on getting started with Power BI. We have a lot in store in the next hour or so. So what we plan to do here is I just walk you through the agenda first, what we have in mind for this session, what we plan to cover. And once that agenda is set, we'll dive straight into Power BI. In case you haven't downloaded the data set, I'll just share the link with you guys in the chat window. If you want to follow along, I've just shared the link. You can do that. You can follow along with me. And in case you're just here to understand what is Power BI, how does that work, that's also perfectly fine. That's I encourage that. That kind of thinking is how we'll go from wherever we are to where we want to be. So whatever your objective for joining, please feel free to ask questions wherever you feel there's a concept that you didn't quite get, or there's something you want to explore more, or if you have a question generally related to analytics or business intelligence or even data science in general, feel free to put that in the chat window. If it's relevant to the topic at hand that we're covering right then, I'll pick it up right there itself. If not, we'll obviously have the Q&A at the end. So feel free to just stay back till that point, and I will for sure address that question. All right, so let me quickly see if anybody has a question. I'm just pasting the download dataset link again. Just download that Excel file and keep it with you. And yes, we are recording this session. So Suresh, just keep that question. We'll cover it towards the end. Just park that question, and for sure we'll try and cover it once we finish up with Power BI. All right, so a quick introduction about me. I can see a few familiar faces already in the audience, but in case somebody is here who hasn't interacted with me before, so my name is Pranav Dhar. I am an analytics and BI. BI stands for Business Intelligence consultant and trainer. I have over 11 years of experience in all sorts of analytics and visualization roles. I've spent data visualization is something that I enjoy doing quite a lot, and I've spent a lot of times on different projects, different kinds of problems, trying to solve them, trying to bring it out for the end user, the stakeholder, the client. So I have experience in a lot of domains, a lot of industries, and I'm also a lead instructor and lead content creator, program head for a bunch of tools, including of course Power BI. But apart from this, Tableau, SQL, Microsoft Excel, and a tool called Alteryx, which those who've heard of are in love with Alteryx. Those who haven't, look at Alteryx as a tool that it just sounds funny, but it is pretty useful if you get the hang of it. And that is that is in a nutshell about me. So what are we planning to cover today? Why are we here? And thank you everybody for giving me an hour of your Wednesday evening. I know it's smack in the middle of the week, so I really appreciate it. What we have in store is very quickly at the start, we'll understand, okay, fine, Power BI is great, but where does it fit in into the overall data science analytics ecosystem? Why should you learn Power BI specifically? Why not something else? I'll quickly pick up the age-old question of Power BI versus Tableau. That is something every training that I do, every post that I have on any social media channel related to Power BI or Tableau or any of the tools, an inevitable question comes in. Should I learn Tableau? Should I learn Power BI? Which one should I learn? Why should I learn this? Why can't I learn the other one? So I'll quickly offer my 2 cents on that before we start. And once we've done that, we'll understand the problem statement, the data set. Hopefully you guys will have. So anybody who's joined us in the last couple of minutes, I'm sharing a link Excel file. Please download and keep it ready. And we'll understand the problem statement, what are we working with, and then we'll dive straight into Power BI. So the objective here is I'm not going to spend time on explaining each feature in the Power BI interface. Consider this like a crash course in designing a dashboard in Power BI. And at the end of the session, if there's one thing that you want to take away from this 60 minutes that you're giving me here on this Wednesday evening, make it, or afternoon or morning, depending on where you are, make it that one, Power BI is a very, very flexible and powerful tool, regardless of which domain you're in, which role you're in, whether you're at just starting out in your career, you want to transition into analytics, you are at a mid-management role, or you're at a senior role, doesn't matter. Power BI has a fit in any role, in any field where data is concerned. If you're working with clients, if you want to create something to impress the clients, to show the clients, to monitor any metrics, that is where Power BI comes into play. So this is kind of like a crash course in building a dashboard from Power BI. If after this session you feel, yes, this is something that I'm actually enjoying doing, and I want to explore what else I can do with Power BI, then I'm more than happy to help out. But just give this your full try in these 60 minutes and see at the end of it if there's something that you can take away in your current role, or if there's something down the line you feel this is definitely something that will that resonates with you and you will end up using it at some point. And in that dashboard, we'll drop a bunch of visuals. We look at card visuals, KPI visuals, bar charts, line charts. If we have time, we look at map visualizations as well. We also work with slices and filters to dive into the granularity of the data, how in-depth, flexible, and dynamic can we make our dashboards in a way that when we present it to anybody, whether that's our team members, our boss, our manager, or our leadership team, how can we make it so engaging and absorbing for them that once they interact with it, they want more. They want you to create more dashboards, more granular level reports. So we'll try and do that as well. So in a nutshell, that's our agenda for today. And one methodology that I always have for any session, whether that's a week-long training or just like a 1 hour session that we have here, is that we want to combine the tool, which is Power BI, with our business sense. Because see, Power BI at the end of the day, as good as it is, as useful as it is just a tool. If we don't understand what we are driving towards, if we don't understand where to use it, Power BI doesn't have a lot of use for us. So we will try and combine the tool with we'll put on our business hats, and that is how we start to master the art of answering questions for the client, building dashboards in a way that we can, one, leverage the full power of the tool, and two, get our own logical thought process going along the way. And that is what we'll try and combine here. Okay, so I'll quickly start off before we get into Power BI with two questions. First, where does Power BI fit into the ecosystem? So I've taken this from, unfortunately, I couldn't find the source. If anybody knows the source, please share in the chat window. I really like this chart, which has two things. One, it has business value on the horizontal axis at the bottom and complexity on the vertical axis. So as you go from left to right, the business value rises. As you go from bottom to top, the complexity rises. So in 5 steps, this is a wonderful explanation of how the typical analytics or data science ecosystem works. At the lowest end is the reporting part, which answers the question of what happened. As in, what if I'm looking at sales numbers, for example, or profit numbers, or number of subscribers, all those things tell you that based on the historical data, this is what happened. Sales went down, sales went up, number of subscribers. If you've been following the news recently, you would have seen Netflix is in the news for, unfortunately, the wrong reasons, for losing a lot of subscribers. So that reporting part answers the question of what happened. Detective analysis, there are other terminologies for that, but detective analysis answers the question of why. Now that you know the what, you answer the why. Why did that happen in the first place? What are some underlying insights that I can extract or unearth from my data that can help me understand the reason behind the what that happened in the first place? Then we go on to the what's happening now part, as in, okay, fine. So I know what happened. I know why it happened. How do I present it to the end user, whoever that is, whether that's our investors, that's our client stakeholders, our project manager, director, CXO, whoever it is? How do I present it to them? That's where dashboards come in. And this, my mouse has decided not to work. And these 3 steps together make up the business intelligence part of the analytics ecosystem, or the analytics spectrum. And Power BI combines these 3 things: the reporting, the detective analysis, and the dashboards, to bring out all these questions. What happened? Why did it happen? And what can we do about it? These 3 questions are answered by tools like Power BI, by tools like Tableau and Excel. Beyond this point is where the machine learning part comes into play. Wherever you have to predict something, like, can you predict the number of customers about to leave my company? Number of, let's say, what are my high value customers going to look like in the next 10 years? So on and so forth. Those kind of questions are answered by machine learning algorithms, and that's where predictive analytics comes in. Power BI has a predictive component, though it's not very reliable. You won't find a lot of people in the industry using it, but it is there in case you want to still explore it. And beyond that point, then comes the big data, deep learning, computer vision part of things, that once I can make predictions, but if I am dealing at scale on data that you can imagine the scale of Amazon, Flipkart, all these companies, they have data at a very humongous scale. How do I build pipelines to store the data? How do I build models or all sorts of different things in terms of predicting all sorts of different problem statements for that particular company? That is a completely different league altogether. So what we are focusing on is this part, the what, the why, and the what we can do about it. And as you rise higher in the spectrum, the business value increases for obvious reasons, but the complexity also increases. So the when you get to the predictive part, obviously then you have to deal with mathematical equations, derivatives, so on and so forth. All the machine learning algorithms come into play. And when that happens, you have to deal with complexity. And these three things, which we will be focusing on, is where one, the business value lies as well, and the complexity is not too high, not steep enough that we can't actually learn it, even if we might not know programming. And that's the power of Power BI. What is the difference between Power BI and Tableau? Why should you spend your time learning Power BI as opposed to something like Tableau? Or there are other tools out there like Click and some other SPSS tools and so on and so forth. So why Power BI specifically? And this is usually the reaction when people are confused. What do I learn? I don't know what to learn. They're just scratching their head, pulling their hair out. I mean, it's and to be honest with you, when I started learning, I also learned Tableau first about 7, 8 years back, and Power BI actually came into the fore in the last 4, 5 years. But I started learning Tableau, and I thought there's nothing better in the world than Tableau, and I stood my ground till 2020 that no, Tableau is the be all and end all. I don't care about Power BI. While I was learning Power BI and using it, I was still staunch in my support for Tableau. But things have changed in the last 3, 4 years, even before the pandemic. So I'll show you a story in 3 visuals, which will hopefully convince you why Power BI is something you should absolutely have in your skill set. And that's not to say Tableau is useless. Tableau still has its use. It is used in a lot of industries, a lot of organizations use it. But if you are picking one tool right now in 2022, make it Power BI. There's no question about it. So this is the Magic Quadrant launched by Gartner. Gartner is a pretty big firm, and this Magic Quadrant is something that they launch every year. It's a well-respected quadrant or report that they launch somewhere around February every year, and they rank all the different tools of the different companies based on various factors. So if you just Google Gartner Magic Quadrant for analytics, you'll get this quadrant for every year. So this is 2016, as you can see here, and you can see Microsoft, obviously, since they had Power BI, is somewhere here in the leaders quadrant, which is good, but it's lagging behind. Tableau was in the lead, and fast forward 3 years, and if this can come up, there we go. And here we have Microsoft in that 3-year period from 2016 to 2019. Microsoft took the lead. It went ahead of Tableau, but not by a lot. You could see the shift happening, but it wasn't as pronounced as fast over 3 years as we can see here. So this is from about 3 months ago when they launched the report, or 2 months ago. And you can see here Tableau's obviously been bought over, acquired by Salesforce, but Tableau's still there where it was in 2019 and where it was in 2016. But Microsoft has gone from here all the way to here. And under Satya Nadella, they've done extremely well in terms of pivoting their strategy, leveraging the cloud. And right now, if you talk to any professional in the industry, not just in India, around the world, Power BI is something that they are either trying to get into the organization or it's already there. So if there's one tool you want to use right now, and it requires little to no programming experience, actually no programming experience at all, Power BI is that tool. So if you had any doubt before this, which one you should learn, it's Power BI. All right, so with that, let me just check if there are any questions. So Madhav is asking, would you be talking about things which are different from Tableau, for example? Most of visual are similar, so we can understand the benefits of different features. We can talk about that towards the end for sure. So Devlina, yes, thank you for pointing that out. A major difference between the two is the license price. Tableau has a license price, if I'm not wrong, of $70 a month, which is pretty steep for anybody who wants to learn. Microsoft, at its base offering, offers Power BI Desktop for free. There are a couple of things that you might need the Pro account for, but even the Pro account is $10 a month. And that $60 difference is obviously pretty big for anybody who's using Power BI. And that is definitely, as Deblina says, a huge reason why Microsoft is powered ahead of Tableau in that sense. All right, so that is at its core one of the key primary reasons why you should be learning Power BI. It is required anywhere there's data. Power BI will find a way of being useful at some point. And if nobody in your organization or your project is using it right now, whether you're in HR, finance, marketing, operations, in data science itself, but I've never used Power BI, you're in quality, whatever role, function, industry you're in, Power BI has a role to play in that sense. All right, so what we'll do here is we'll dive into Power BI straight away. And what I want to do is just everybody who wants to follow along with me, just open up Power BI. And once you do that, don't worry about signing in. You don't need to sign in. So if you get this window when you open up, just close this pop-up window. Just close that. And let me quickly double click this. All right. So anybody who's joined us in the last 10 minutes, I'm sharing a link in the chat window. That's the dataset link to the Superstore dataset. So if you've used Tableau, you will be well aware of what this does. Okay, so here's what we'll do. I will talk through the particular data set in just a second. Let's first import that into Power BI so we can actually start analyzing data. What we want to do here is we want to import the data from Excel. It's an Excel file that we're working with. So we can straight away connect to it. That option is here. There are multiple ways of getting data into Power BI, and I'll show you a couple here. So one is obviously this one. Power BI understands what are the 2-3 most common data sources that people connect to. So it offers you that Excel, the SQL Server option straight away here. If that is not something you're looking for, if your data is hosted in the cloud on, let's say, Azure or GCP, Google Cloud Platform, or is this somewhere else on some other database, you can also connect to that. There are about 120 different data connectors that Power BI offers. And when you go here up in the ribbon, you will be, by default, you will be in the Home tab. This looks a lot like Excel. That's the idea behind it's both a Microsoft product. So that is another advantage, that if somebody is coming in from Excel and learning Power BI, a lot of these things will look familiar to us. At this stage in Home, you have this Get Data option, and you have a drop-down link below it. So click on Get Data, and you get the common data sources from Power BI. This is an Excel workbook. You can connect to Power BI data sets, data flows, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So there are way too many. You can click on this More option right at the bottom of the drop-down. Click on this More option and give it a second. Depending on your RAM, if it's a 4 GB laptop that you're working with, Power BI will be slow. There is nothing we can do about it. If it's a 8 GB or a 16 GB laptop, it will just be a little faster. So you'll just have to be patient. If it's an old machine or a 4 GB laptop, just give it 5 more seconds than you see on my screen. Here in the Get Data tab, we have all these data connectors that we have. So by default, it takes you into the all section where every single data source has been listed down. If you know where you want to get to, you can always search it. For example, if I want to connect to my SQL database on my machine, I can just type in MySQL and it'll allow me to connect to the MySQL database that I have on my machine. I can close this and again, just give it a second. And you can go through, you can connect to files. You have these different options. You can also directly connect to a folder. So if you have, let's say, 5-6 different files that you want to connect to, you can always click on this folder and get all those files into Power BI in one go itself. You don't have to do it again and again and again. You can also connect to a CSV file. In database, it has pretty much everything that is used in the industry is available here. So you have Oracle databases, you have SQL Server, you can connect to Access. I don't know if anybody uses Access anymore, but that option is there. And PostgreSQL, SAP, Amazon Redshift, Google BigQuery, something that if you don't know about, you should at least read about what that does, and so on and so forth. So all these database, cloud-based platforms are here. And you have Azure, of course, you have Azure, that's a Microsoft offering. And at the end, you also have other. So whatever does not fit into the previous categories, all of that is here. So when you're working with big data, you have Hadoop and Spark and Hive here. You can also connect to an R script or a Python script if required. You can connect to SharePoint. And one of the things I like about Power BI, which Tableau doesn't have, is I can directly pull data from a URL that I point to, as long as there's an HTML table in there. I don't have time in this session to show you, but if you click on web and click on connect, it'll ask you for the URL. And if you paste the URL in that URL, like a Wikipedia page, a Wikipedia is made up of HTML tables. So if you want to extract or analyze any data that's present in on a Wikipedia page, then you can just point, you can select web, click on connect, paste the Wikipedia URL, and Power BI is smart enough to extract those HTML tables and give it to you in tabular format without you having to, structure it, point it to this, there, here, that, knowing coding, all of that. Nothing required. Point it to the URL. If there's a table, it'll extract it for you. And that's something Tableau outright at least does not offer. I'm sure there are ways around it. And all these options. So for now, what we want is we want to import an Excel file. So we'll go to file and you have this Excel workbook here. You can either click on import data from Excel, this card at the back end, you can click on Excel workbook, or you can select Excel workbook here and click on connect. And wherever you've downloaded the Superstore file, please go ahead and select it. I am hoping this is the one. So let's click on Superstore dataset. Wherever you downloaded it, please go ahead and do that and click on open and give it a second. Power BI is notoriously slow for on a lot of systems. So you just have to be a little bit patient in that sense. So what I'll do is I'll just take a pause here, everyone, and just let me know in the chat window if you were able to download and import the file. So just give me a yes or a ready in the chat window so that virtual machine, I'm using AWS to connect to it. And that's how I'm using it. If there's also a solution called Parallels Desktop, if you've heard of it, they have a 14-day free trial. If you want to check that out, you can run a Windows on it. Either way, you'll have to find a way to run Windows on a Mac. It's not going to run directly. So you can use a virtual machine, you can use Bootcamp on a Mac to install Windows, or you can use Parallels. These are three options you can follow, but there's no direct desktop application. And as far as I know, at least till a couple of months back, Microsoft were adamant that they have no plans of creating it on a Mac because, well, Microsoft Windows, so why would they create it for a Mac? So you'll have to find one of the three ways to do it. Perfect. Thanks, Rachel. So thanks, Suresh and Sakshi, for confirming. Debrina, what's the validity of the free Power BI? There's no validity. It's lifetime free. There is no validity at all. You can keep using it however long you want to. There is no restriction at all. The pro version comes in if you want to share your work with somebody else, with your client, then you'll have to find a way to get the pro license, which is $10 a month. If you don't, if you're just using it for practice purposes or just doing it or sharing the Power BI file itself with people, it's free. You don't have to pay a dime to do it. And that's Microsoft for you. They have a long-term strategy and it's clearly paying off. Okay, so everybody, thanks for confirming. Here, what we have is we have three tables. You can ignore the orders one, people to return three table. That's just something that Power BI kind of creates by itself to understand what is the underlying data. We can ignore that for now. We'll be primarily working with this orders table, which has most of the data we're looking for. So if we click on this orders table, you'll get a very nice preview here, a tabular preview on the right-hand side, which has all the data points that you're looking for. All of them are here. I'll just walk us through what are these data points when we get our data into Power BI. So this orders table, you'll notice a checkbox next to it. Just toggle it, just select that, and don't select people and returns. That's something if you want to practice later, you can keep that for later. We'll primarily be working with the orders sheet. So just select orders and you get two options at the bottom, load and transform data. What do these two do? Transform data is meant for anybody or anyone who wants to pre-process their data before we create any visuals. if you have empty values, if you have also a very unstructured data, that first you want to clean that up before you can analyze something, then you can click on transform data. Please don't do that right now. That's kind of like a different session altogether. But in case our data set is actually very clean, so we don't need to do that anyway. But if you do, if you have data set with a lot of missing values or all sorts of wrong syntaxes and all those things going on, then we can go into transform data and work with that. But in our case, data set is good to go, no issues there. We will straight away hit load on this option. So just go ahead and click on load. And what this will do is it will just take the orders table, no other table. Just take the orders table from our Excel sheet and load that into Power BI. If now I wanted to load something else, I realized no, I actually wanted the people's table in as well. Then you'll again have to go to Excel workbook, get that file in, select the people table, and then work with that. So just keep that point in mind that when you're importing it, make sure you know what you're doing. Otherwise, you'll have to repeat that process again. And in the industry, when you are, I mean, you're already working with deadlines, avoiding these kind of things is ideal. So just know what you're doing before you start importing stuff. For us, you'll notice once you click on load, on the right hand side under the fields pane, we have the orders table has come in, which by default is collapsed. So if we can expand it, you'll notice an arrow pointing to the right next to orders. Just click on that, which will expand that particular table. And it shows you all the columns that we have in alphabetical order. It shows you in the orders table. If I wanted to look at this in a more Excel-like format, that I want to understand what are the numbers that I'm dealing with, just want to get a sense of the data that we have, then if you take your mouse to on the left-hand side, you'll notice there are 3 tabs there. The first one, which is the one that's open by default and where all the magic happens in Power BI, that's your report tab. Then you have the data tab. We'll come to this in a second. And then we have the model tab. Right, so this report tab is where all the visualizations will happen, where all the things that we will do, we'll do all of that here. But for now, just very quickly, everybody just click on the data tab. Data tab is nothing but a tabular visualization or tabular view of the data or the table that we've selected. And let me just quickly check if there is anything. No. Okay, great. And here we can see that it's a very Excel-like view. You have these headers at the top, the column names, and all the values are represented as single rows, which is perfect. And you have order ID. So this particular data set is for a hypothetical store called Superstore, which all sorts of order information, customer information, region information. You can see here at the top, you have order ID, order date, ship date. So when was the order placed? When was it shipped? Ship mode is what did the customer choose as the shipping mode? Did they want same day delivery? Did they want standard, first class, second class? Then we have customer level information. We have the unique customer ID and the customer name and the segment the customer belongs to. There are 3, I think there are 3 segments here. Then there's the country, basically region level information. Country is United States throughout. This is a United States level data set. You have city, state, postal code, region in the United States, whether it's the West Coast, East Coast, is it in the central location, south, so on and so forth. After that, we have the product level information. We have product ID, category the product belongs to, subcategory the product belongs to, and the product name. And after that, finally, we have the sales quantity, discount, and profit columns, which are all your measures that we want to work with. And these are for at least sales and profit are some of the things we'll be working with right now. But before we get into any visualization, we start building up a report and a dashboard. It's a good idea to quickly format the data in a way that's a little bit presentable, because at the end of the day, the reason behind doing all of this, putting in this much effort, is that we want the data to look presentable. If it looks something like this, 3.89399 all the way over to I don't know how many nines there are, and somewhere there are 4 decimal places, somewhere there are 3, somewhere there are 9. It's very inconsistent, and that's taking away from the message we want to portray when we are creating these visuals. So what you want is we quickly want to correct this. We want to get everything under the same umbrella. We want a good format, a consistent format going. So for now, what I'll do is we'll take the sales and profit and format them. Quantity and discount, if you want, you can, when you're practicing later, you can try it out on those quantity and discount columns as well. So select sales, just click on the sales column, select on the sales column. And since this is a financial number, This is a revenue or a currency number here that we have. So I want to point this, I want to get a dollar sign in front of it to signify that this is not just any random number. This is actually the revenue for this particular company. So when you select sales, you'll notice here at the top, you have column tools in your ribbon, and you get this dollar sign here. So don't click on the dollar sign. You click on the drop down next to the dollar sign, next to the currency sign. Click on that. And this is where you can select whatever currency is applicable to your data set. If it's Indian currency, you can just scroll down, find where it's INR or Indian rupees. If it's something else, if it's yen, if it's something else, whatever it is, you can select it from here and work with that. If it's pounds, euros, you can select all of that. In our case, it's obviously one, it's United States, so obviously it will be the dollar. So we'll select this first option, which is English United States dollar. So just select this. And by default, it what Power BI does, it converts that to two decimal places. So wherever we had 1 or 4 or 5 or 6 or more decimal places, it rounds it off to two decimal places and adds a dollar sign next to it. And it looks very neat. And when we drop visualizations in just about a minute from now, we'll see the power of this dollar sign, how presentable it makes our entire report and a dashboard. That is where this comes in. So what I want you guys to do is take this same idea, how we converted this sales column into a currency sign, and apply that to the profit column. Use the same idea and format the profit column accordingly. This is also obviously revenue numbers. So quickly do that, add a dollar sign. And once you're done, just give me a heads up in the chat window that you've managed to add a dollar sign, and then we can go back to our report and start building our dashboard. Just give me a yes or a done in the chat window, and we'll move forward. Perfect. Thanks, Devlina and Sohan. Anuradha done. Ankita, Suresh done. Perfect. I'll just give it another 30 seconds in case anybody's still trying. Sakshi done. Manisha finished. Aarti, great. Thanks for confirming, guys. We'll just give another 20 seconds. All right. So hopefully everybody is done with that. We can go back. So this was the data tab. There's another tab at the bottom, the model tab. This is nothing to do with machine learning. There is no predictive modeling going on. In Power BI terminology, model basically means connecting two or more tables. So when you have data coming in from two or more sources, and that's usually the case when you're working in the industry, you have reports come 3-4 different reports, different sheets, different workbooks. You can connect them all together here in this model tab. That's not something we're doing here. If you want to explore that, I'm more than happy to point you in the right direction. But this is what the model tab does. It allows you to connect things, connect different sheets so that you can perform some sort of analysis there. All right. So go back, everybody, go back to the report tab. Go back to the report tab, and now let's start painting our canvas with a few visualizations. We've done the hard work, we've got the file, we've just formatted it a little bit, and now the fun part begins, putting things together. So to start off, what you want to do is you'll notice there are 3-4 things that you want to focus on. One is you have this fields pane, which we've already looked at, which has all the columns that we have here. The visualizations pane, which has all the default visuals that Power BI offers. We'll go through a few of them in just a second. Below the visualizations pane, we have the values section, which will always change based on the chart that you select. So in a bar chart, you'll get a few different fields here. In a line chart, you'll get a few more fields. In a scatter plot, you'll get something else. So it will change based on the chart that you select. And next to this visual build visual pane, which is selected by default, you have this paintbrush icon, which refers to formatting your visual. So whenever you have a visual in place, there's always something you want to do. You want to change the color, you want to add something, you want to reduce something, you want to get data labels, whatever we want to do, that all happens in the formatting section. And that's what we look at for a couple of charts that we create. For now, let's get into it. Enough of the playing around with everything. Let's actually get a few charts into play here. What we want first is, in any dashboard, there will be at least one metric, which is called a key performance indicator or KPI, that the business wants to track. There can be multiple as well, of course. in our case, we will look at two metrics or two KPIs, sales as well as profit. And usually you would have noticed when you look at any dashboards in the industry, or if you just do a quick Google search for sales dashboards or industry dashboards, you'll notice that one or two or three metrics are always positioned here on the top left. Why is that the case? Why do we have those KPIs on the top left? A key reason for that is most of us read from, not most of us, all of us here at least, read from left to right. English is a left to right language. Hindi is a left to right language. And ever since we were kids, we've programmed our brains, or society's programmed our brains in a way that we read everything from left to right. And that is no, a dashboard is no different. When you show this dashboard to anybody, if you're pitching this to anybody, if you are convincing your client, your stakeholder, your audience, or whatever it is that you want to convince them or persuade them for, our eyes first go to the top left, because that is how we are programmed to read certain things. So important metrics will always be on the top left, and then you go to the right, and then back to the bottom left, and then the right. So there's a Z formation or a Z letter symbol that you can follow whenever you're creating a dashboard for anybody. This is a good rule of thumb that you can follow this Z symbol to create a visualization that has an impact on an audience and convinces them that whatever it is that we're trying to present, it is worth their time. And this is one of the recommendations that we have. So let's get the KPIs going. In your visualizations pane, you'll have this icon which says 1, 2, 3. This is the card visual. It's the fourth icon in the fourth row of my visualizations pane. This is the card visual. So just click on that once. Just click on that, and you'll get this card visual here on the top left. By default, that's where Power BI places the card visual, because it's smart enough to understand that that's where most people put the card visual. Right now, there's nothing there. It's just a silhouette of something. So I'll just resize this. We'll just resize this, and we'll keep it on the top left. What do we want in this card visual? We want the sales numbers. So go to your fields pane, just scroll down and find where it says sales, and just select sales. You'll notice a checkbox next to sales. Just select sales. And you notice by default, Power BI again is smart enough to understand that you're not looking for the entire value, that it's $2,000,000 to $293,000, 688, whatever that number. A good, let's say, concise version of the entire value is that you can add M to represent millions there and show it as $2.3 million. Can you change that? You absolutely can. If you want to show the full value anyway, you decide, no, I don't care. I want to show the full value. I want the audience to be impressed by the sales numbers that my team has put in, which is fair enough. So what you can do is you can keep this card visual selected. Go to this option, paintbrush icon next to the build visual option. Go to the paintbrush icon. This is where the formatting happens. And here you can go to callout value. Just expand callout value, and you'll notice there's something called display units, which is auto by default, which is what Power BI has done. If you decide, no, I don't like it, I want the full value, just select none from the dropdown. Just select none from the dropdown. And you'll notice you'll have to expand this a little bit, unfortunately, but the full value, $2,297,200 has been displayed here. For me, it makes no sense. That's taking up way too much space. That is what I like to call visual clutter. If I can just concisely show $2.3 million, it's getting my message across. So I don't really need to show the full value. So in display units, I'll just go to auto or millions. Both of them will do the same thing. If you can also try out billions, thousands, trillions, so on and so forth when you're practicing later. We will select auto, and we'll go back to $2.3 million and make this a little bit more concise. Apart from that, you can change the color, all the formatting that you want to do. If you want to make this stand out a little bit from everything else in your dashboard, you can play around with this color. You can select blue, for example. It will turn blue. The font will turn blue. You can change the background as well. That's not something we're doing here. I will leave that up to you guys. You can go to general in this visualization pane. You can just play around with the effects. You have the background in the effects, so you can change the color here. You can toggle all these things on and off. But that option, formatting as far as colors and all that is concerned, Just keep that as a practice thing. Just play around with these different things that we have and work with that. And you can also control the decimal places. Right now, there are 2 decimal places. If you want to show only one, just put in 1 here and it will cut it down to basically 1 decimal place, but I'll keep it to auto. And it's back to $2.3 million. So this is what we can do with the card visual. What I want you guys to do is follow the same logic and quickly draw up a card visual and get the profit next to the sales as well. Put a card visual here next to sales and call it profit and quickly draw that up. And I'll wait for you guys to confirm in the chat window that you've done it. So as soon as you're done, just give me a heads up and then we can move forward after that. Madhav, is there a way to bring in dollar symbol in the visual without changing in the data set? No, there is not. You will have to change it at its source. You can't format it inside the card visual itself. You'll have to do it at its source. You'll have to change the column to the currency visual. You can't do it here inside Power BI. Sohan and Suresh, thanks guys for confirming. I'll just give it another 30 seconds in case anybody's still trying. Anuradha, thank you. Let's give it another 20 seconds. Thanks, Manisha, for confirming. Sakshi done, perfect. Deblina done, great. I think Aarti is also typing something. I think the thing about Microsoft Teams is that unlike Zoom, everybody else can also see the chat when I'm looking at the chat. So I think Microsoft Teams really needs to work on that part of their tool. Okay, so I'll go back here. I'm not doing the profit. I'm assuming you guys have done it. We'll dive straight into the other visualization. So what you want is I want to look at sales by subcategory. To do that, I will use this third chart called the clustered bar chart. So click on the clustered bar chart, everyone. Click on the clustered bar chart. And let's just put this somewhere on the top right. Put this on the top right. And what do we want? We want subcategory sales, right? So just like we populated the sales and profit card visuals, we'll select subcategory from our table and we'll select sales. And a very neat visualization comes in, which is already sorted in descending order from high to low value of how each subcategory has done in terms of sales numbers. Now, the formatting part is something I leave to you guys. You know where it is. It's there in this format visual. There's just one thing I would like to show you here. Is actually 2 things. One is the data labels. Right now, if I wanted to quickly look at phones and chairs, but what are their exact values? I'll have to look at the x-axis and see, okay, it's somewhere, it's just over $0.3 million. Fine. I'll have to take my mouse and hover it over it to get the exact values. And if we leave any guesswork to the audience, that's a recipe for disaster and misunderstanding, which is what you want to avoid. So wherever it's possible, try to call out things that you don't need to explain to people. If they look at the visualization, everything, it should speak for itself. So when you go to this format visual, you have this option of data labels, which are off by default. Every time you drop a chart or visual in Power BI, it does not switch on the data labels by default. So you'll have to toggle them on or toggle them on manually. So data labels off, click them on, select them, and you can see the data labels are coming in. Now the problem is, I don't want it to display as 0.33 million, 0.2 million. That's just bad. That's not consistent. It does not portray the full scale of the sales that my company has done for each subcategory. So I want to change that. I want to show the scale at least to some degree to give an idea of what are some of the raw numbers we are working with. So here what we'll do is we will just expand data labels, scroll down a little bit, and you'll have this values option here. You'll have to expand that as well. And here again, just like in the card visuals, we have this display units, which is set to auto. In our case, you can either select none or you can select thousands. And select thousands, and you get a better sense of the data by looking at these updated numbers that instead of 0.3 million, 0.2 million, which is not good. We can see at a much better scale of what each subcategory has brought in terms of sales numbers and the difference between them, if that's something that anybody wants to look at in the audience. And you can play around with the decimal values, you can play around with the formatting, colors, bold, so on and so forth of the data labels here. And here in options, the position is auto by default. You'll notice here these two phones and chairs most of the time go inside the bar. Everything else is outside the bar. Again, avoid that. Consistency is something we should strive for when we are building any dashboard for any audience in a business setting. So try to make it as consistent as possible. In our case, we'll just say outside end to force these two data labels to go outside the bar and for everything else to look the same way. Don't leave it as it is and think that it's fine. It tells a message. Why should I care about these things? These small, subtle things are what will separate you from the rest of the audience who will think exactly like that and end up, whether it's an interview where you're creating this assignment, whether it's an industry where you're creating this for the client or the stakeholder, these subtle things do matter. Whether that's the client or the recruiter is thinking directly or subconsciously, these things will end up mattering. So keep these consistency points in mind whenever you're building any visualizations. And finally, if I want to focus the audience's attention on one thing in particular, let's say on the machine subcategory, it could be that category is doing well, or I want to talk about that category in the next meeting when I'm presenting this. So to highlight that, you have this bars option. You can expand this and you have this default color, which is blue. And by the way, you'll notice most of the tools, Excel, Power BI, Tableau, have a blue color by default of any bars because that's a color that colorblind people can also see. So it's that is why they offer this blue color first. But you can always change it if you are sure of your audience. You can just select here and change the color. I'm not doing it. You can play around with it. What I want you guys to focus on is this show all button. What this show all button does, if I just toggle it on, is every single subcategory now has an entry here in this show all button. So now I can change the color of the individual bars. If I want to change the color of the machines subcategory, for example, I'll go to machines and I'll say this is something concerning for me, for example, and I want the audience to just know that when they're looking at this. So I can just make this red or whatever this color is, and that kind of stands out from the rest of the bars. And a good tip here is that if you want to specifically talk about machines, you want everybody to focus on machines, what you can do is you can make the other bars blend into the background. How do you do that? It's not rocket science, it's very straightforward. In this default color, click on that and just select a color that is kind of similar to the background. In our case, the background is white. I'll select any of these colors, let's say this first one, which is 10% darker. And all the other bars tend to kind of stay in the background. They're not going away. They're not suddenly disappearing or vanishing. They're still there. But this is now telling a message that machines is not doing so well. That's what we want the audience to focus on. So these are some of the subtle things we can do in terms of formatting the visual and work with that. So that's your bar chart. All right. Next, what I want to do is, so we just give me 10 more minutes, guys. We'll be done with the dashboard very, very soon. Next, what you want to do is I want to get a line chart going here on the bottom left, on the left hand side of our dashboard, which tells the end user how have my sales done over time. Our data set covers 4 years worth of sales. So how have we done from the time we started collecting data to whatever is the end date in our data set? To do that, select the line chart. You have this line chart here. It's the first icon and the second row in your visual. Select the line chart. And by the way, one thing you should notice is that when you have a visual selected and you select a line chart, this will convert into a line chart. So try to avoid that. Please don't do that. Click anywhere outside the visual to deselect the visual and then click the line chart. So it populates as a new chart by itself. And we'll just put this here on the bottom left. What we want is sales over time, right? So in this case, over time means there has to be some date component into play. So we'll use this order date option. So just select order date and select sales. And you have a very nice looking chart here on the bottom left, which shows us that it started in 2019, goes all the way over to 2022. And it shows us how sales for this particular superstore have changed over time. So 2019 had about $500,000, went down just a little bit in 2020, and then saw exponential growth in the next couple of years. So that's probably a good thing for superstore. But when you selected order date, notice here in the line chart in the axis, you have four components that make up the order date. You have year, quarter, month, and day. What do these things do? This is called a hierarchy in Power BI, and it's very powerful in terms of what it helps us do. Right now, we are on the year part of it, the default option, the default view that we get. However, if when you're presenting this, your audience says, okay, that's fine, but I want to look at just a little bit more granular data. How have my sales varied quarter by quarter? This is fine. Exponential growth, great, good work, pat on the back. But I want a like slightly more in-depth view. So instead of having to go here, figuring out, okay, how do I get quarter in and do I create a new line chart? Once I have this hierarchy in play, I can use what is called as a drill down option in Power BI to just go to the next level. And you don't have to create a formula. You don't have to worry about anything of the sort. Everything is done. It's just one click of the button away. And you'll notice this option expand all down one level in the hierarchy. These two arrows going away from each other, this option, just click on that and your line chart changes to go one level down. It's gone from year to quarter. And if you take your mouse and hover it over any of these data points, you'll notice it's 2019 Q4, 2020 Q1, so 2020 Q3, Q4, so on and so forth. So this offers you a slightly more in-depth look at what my data looks like. And we can clearly see here quarter fours across the board for all 4 years. Quarter four is where all the actual sales happened. All the other quarters are not doing so well. So quarter four, and that was an insight that was not there when I was looking at year level data. And that's what hierarchies tend to do without having to, populate four different charts in here. I can quickly go one level deeper. So let's go one level deeper. We are at quarter. Let's go to month. And again, it changes to reflect how month by month, starting from Jan 2019 all the way over to December 2022, how have my sales varied month by month? And I leave the insights and all that up to you, but you can also dive one level deeper. We have day level data as well. So if I go one level deeper, and I can clearly see this one day, whatever it was, clearly there was exponential sales on that day, exception, outlier kind of thing, which again was not visible when we were talking about the month or the quarter of the year. So this is the level of granularity that Power BI offers, which other tools kind of tend to lag behind in that sense. And all we have to do is just get the hierarchy in play, and that's it. That's all you have to do. And to go back, you have this up arrow icon. Just click on the drill up option. You are back to month, you're back to quarter, and you're back to year. So this is how you can just drill down into certain things and work with those things here. And that's what a line chart tends to offer. Drill down works with bar charts. It works with line charts. It does not work with funnel charts and a couple of other charts, but the most common charts it works with, and it is very, very powerful in that sense. So someone is asking, is it possible to convert the hovering data in terms of thousand millions? It probably should be. I'm not sure. It's a good question. Okay, if you had data labels, then it has got it. These tooltips that you see here, if I just select this again, these tooltips, you can add things here. So if I think we're looking at sales summarize. If I add sales here, and you can format sales to make it look like millions. In that way, then this will show as sales 83K, for example, that you can control here. But the initial value that you see, the blue value, that is not something Power BI offers you control over. There's no way at all to change that. That will display as it is. All right, so everybody, just one more chart I want to create, and then the slicers, and then we're done with the dashboard. So this is called a donut chart. You could draw a pie chart as well, but I'm not a fan of pie charts. And if you talk to anybody in the analytics or visualization community, a pie chart is the most polarizing chart that you'll see anywhere. People either absolutely love it or completely despise it. There seems to be no middle ground for some reason. But if you like pie charts, please don't let my opinion sway you. Use it if you want to. I find a donut chart just a little bit better than a pie chart because of the space in the middle. So what we'll do is we'll go to this donut chart. It's the fifth icon in the third row in the visualizations pane. And the icons are very helpful. They help you understand which chart you're going for, especially when you're starting out. If Power BI is new to you, these icons are very helpful in terms of getting you to select the visualization that you want to portray in that dashboard. So select a donut chart. And at least for me, it very nicely went into the bottom right. If it's not there for you, just drag it and put it on the bottom right. And what we want in the donut chart is very simple: sales by region. Essentially, how much sales has each region done for me as a superstore company. So once you select and put the donut chart here in the bottom right, we'll just select region and select sales. A very nice donut chart comes in, which talks about how per region my sales have happened. But I don't really want people to look at this and say, okay, so this purple or violet or whatever this color is, oh, this refers to west. What about this blue one? Okay, this refers to central. So we don't want people to waste time, especially if it's a senior audience who already have 10,000 other things they want to do. Attention span is very, very less. In that sense, you want to give the answers right there itself. You don't want them to, waste time comparing notes. So here, what we can do is, one, we can remove the legend. Sorry, I don't want that. We can remove the legend. How do we do that? So select, keep the donut chart selected, go to this format your visual. Okay, I got kicked out by Teams again. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So in this legend, I'll just toggle this off. Legend is gone. Then in detail labels, you have this label contents, which shows you what? The actual value and the percentage, right? So instead of the legend, I can show the region name here as well. How do I do that? So this drop down where label contents is mentioned, go there and just select all detail labels. You can play around with the different options here later on. Just select all detail labels. So that particular region has also come in. And I don't have to show it as a legend. I'm just giving you the answer here itself. This is west, south, central, and east, and that is what we are working with. And that's the advantage of a donut chart. And you can use this space in the middle. I'm not doing it right now, but you can use this space in the middle to show anything like full sales numbers. You can go to insert, you can go to text box, and you can put a text box here, resize this, and just put it here in this hole in the middle, and you can show the total sales here as well. So you can play around with that thing. I'll just delete this, but that is the advantage of a donut chart over a simple pie chart, which does not offer you this option in the middle. One final thing I want to do before we are ready to close the dashboard, and that is that I want to, like we had discussed earlier, I want to apply or give some sort of control over to the end user. And that's where these slicers come in. So if you work with Excel pivot tables, you will hopefully know what slicers are. If not, you will be amazed by what these slicers can do. And slicer is this option. It's the first icon in the fifth row in your visualization pane. It's this icon which says slicer. Just select that, and I will just put it somewhere here. You can put it wherever you want. And what I want is I want to put the category name here, or I want to put category in the slicer. Just select category is the first entry in your orders field. Select category. And there are three categories: furniture, office supplies, and technology. So let's minimize this. And let's get a few other slicers in as well. So let's select another slicer. And here I want ship mode. There are 4 types of ship mode, and I will place this here. And let me get another slicer going where I want to show the order date. So we'll select order date and we'll put that as a slicer here. And so we can worry about the formatting and all those different things later. What I ideally do is I just copy this card visual. I just put it here, copy, paste it, put it here. And here what I can do is I can just show the profit numbers. And here I can show the quantity. So if you have subscriber numbers, anything of the sort, All of that you can show here as KPI visuals and utilize that space, or you can put it on the top as well. It's up to you how you prefer. As long as it's on the left, it's the first thing people are looking at. So what do slicers do? Slicers offer you a level of granularity that nothing else works like it. So if the audience says or your client says, okay, fine, I just want to analyze the furniture segment. Forget everything else for a while. I want to see how I'm doing in terms of the furniture segment or furniture category. So in your category slicer, just select furniture, and every single visual in your report, in this particular report, will change to show only the furniture category numbers. So you can see card visuals, all of them has changed. Line chart, donut chart, bar chart, everything is only showing for the furniture category. If I select office supplies, it's office supplies. If I select technology, it's only technology. And if you want to select multiple things at the same time, just hold down Control on your keyboard and select office supplies. And that is how you can multi-select. You can change that in format. I'm not doing it right now, but you can remove the control and enable multi-select there as well. That is definitely something we can offer. And that's what slicers do. So if somebody says, okay, in the technology category, just show me first class deliveries, first class orders, and it gives you that level of granularity. In addition, this timeline slicer or this date slicer can help you toggle between dates. So let's say somebody says, randomly give me between these two particular dates, give me how have I done in that particular time period, and it updates accordingly for the technology category in the first class ship mode. And that is how you answer questions. That is how you create a dashboard for the client, for the industry, for anybody you're interviewing with. These are the kind of questions and solutions that you would need to come up with when you're using Power BI. That's how you can create an industry level dashboard. So you can play around with the formatting, the different options and all that, but at its essence, at its core, when you strip it down to what Power BI does, we've just seen that in the last 45, 50 minutes. This is what we can do with Power BI. You can play around with the different, all the other visuals here and see what you like, what you don't like, find your comfort level. Play around with this particular data set. There's a lot to explore in this data set. There's a lot more you can do. But this is where we'll just stop for today, and we'll stop it. So if there are any questions, anything you want me to repeat, anything you want me to share, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, we can stop here. From my side, what I'll do is I'll send you guys the recording for sure, and I'll send you a few resources if you want to pursue. If you liked what you saw here, you want to pursue. So, Devlin, how do we save it? Just like we do it in Excel, you have this save option at the top. Just save this. It'll save as a PBIX Power BI file, just whatever you want to name it. And just click save. It'll be saved as a. Once you double click it, this will open in Power BI next time. Sejal, from the dashboard that we've generated here today, are there any key differences that can be identified in the creation of dashboards in Tableau versus Power BI? So see, there was another question like this earlier as well. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name. In this case, see, Tableau can also offers you all these things. Till 2019, I prefer Tableau over Power BI, but these flexibility options that I can put anything I want anywhere without having to make it a float or anything of the sort is something that Tableau does not offer. It has its own, it lives in its own world and its own ecosystem. So Power BI in terms of flexibility and what we can do offers the same thing. But if you're wondering, can I drop these visuals in Tableau and make it look equally good? You absolutely can. Tableau has almost in fact, I would say Tableau has a better data visualization engine than Power BI. It's not even a question. Tableau blows Power BI out of the window when it comes to visualization engines, but Power BI is far more easier to use in terms of flexibility. It's easier to learn and it's far cheaper, like I said. So that is one of the key reasons why Power BI is becoming so common. So Suresh is asking, what is the practical work done by Power BI developer in the job, and everyone? So how can fresher get hired? See, I unfortunately don't, and there's no easy answer for you in that sense. If you're talking about Power BI developer, that is a very technical role. You'll need to learn the M language. In that case, you'll have to learn Power Query. You'll have to understand how to build a pipeline. of data to get it from the data source all the way over to the front end. You'll have to learn MySQL and all of that things. So you'll have to learn all of that if you want to become a Power BI developer. If you want to become an analyst, like a business analyst or a data analyst, then uh, you need to get either way for even a Power BI developer. But for an analyst, you need to build a portfolio of any projects that you can do, put it in a public forum. In fact, here's a funny story from my experience. I landed my role at Analytics Vidya. So I'm not part of Analytics Vidya anymore, but I landed my role at Analytics Vidya in what 2017 because I worked on Tableau and put my work out in the public. I used to have a blog. I've since forgotten the name of that particular blog, but that helped me. So that got me to the attention of Analytics Vidya. They contacted me. I got the role. So if you put it out in a public forum, you connect with the right people. You ask them for feedback, there's a very good chance that you might be asked to sit for an interview. And how that interview goes is obviously up to the project. But at least you're giving yourself a chance by putting yourself out there. So just give yourself a chance, build up a portfolio, and try and work with that. They'll for sure. I got rejected. I don't know how many, 30, 40 people or companies rejected me before I landed the job. So you'll have to be patient. There's no other way around it. But just stick with it, put it in a public forum, put yourself out there as the best way to land any role that you want to get to. And if I missed any question, guys, please, if you can paste it back, I'll answer it if I can. So Devlina, I want to know more like connectors and also get a certification like your Tableau. So how to do that? Uh, is there any reason particularly that you want to get a certification per se? Are you looking for like a career change or a promotion at your current role? Is that something you're looking for? And I'll just answer why I'm asking you that question in a second. But is there any objective that you have for doing that kind of thing? Okay. See, the reason I'm asking that question is certifications, while they're good, there's no doubt that certifications are good. But anybody who knows me knows that when I sat in those interviews, when we were hiring for my team at my previous companies, certifications was at least the last thing we looked at because these days a lot of people bring up certifications. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It shows that somebody is putting in the effort to get to that place. And that's always a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we want to, when we're looking through a lot of resumes, a lot of CVs, and we want to sift through what a person brings to the table, what we typically look for is what have they done with that tool or what have they done for the business. Even if that tool is not relevant, what have they done for the business that I can just look through and understand what you're bringing to the table if we end up hiring you. So that is the reason I was asking you about the objective of that certification. If you want to do it, I think there are plenty of courses on. There's a great course on Udemy of Power BI. I remember when I was learning Power BI, I definitely took up that course. I I think I've forgotten something called Maven Analytics or somebody, and that course is a great starting point in terms of understanding the ins and outs of Power BI. If you want to look at it, there are a few videos on YouTube as well, so-called full courses, but I would avoid them if I was you because they offer a little bit of an unstructured path, which can become even more confusing later on. So I'll share a few resources after the session, maybe by tomorrow. And just if you have any questions after that point, feel free to just send me an email. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Just if you're not connected with me on, I think you are, but if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, please just send me a request and we can work through that. All right, so guys, any other questions? Anything else you want to ask me? I'll share as I said, I'll share the recording in case you want to practice this later. I will share all of those things for sure. Okay. So Devlina, I'm actually working on that right now. I'm glad you asked. So it might take a week or so, but I'll share uh, a link or a few details around it over email, and we can definitely, we can carry on the conversation from that point onwards. Suresh, Pabi has a really good future. Oh, absolutely. No question about it. Take my word for it. I'm doing this on a recording. I can tell you that right now, if you want to learn a tool, that if you want to, even if you don't want to get into analytics, if you're into HR, operations, finance, strategy, whatever you're into, you're not going into analytics per se. Power BI is something you should absolutely have in your portfolio. In the next 2, 3 years, the next 4 years, Power BI is going to grow more. Every organization right now, in terms of its analytics, data, different departments, is looking for people who know Power BI at least at its basic level. So it's a great tool to learn right now in 2022. In fact, a great time to learn was yesterday, but a good time to learn is right now. So it is something that will I mean, you might have heard of this future proofing your career terminology that goes on everywhere these days. So Power BI is as close to that as you can get. I'm not a fan of this future proofing terminology. I think that's just there's nothing known as future proofing in the age of machine learning, but it is a good bet in the next 5 to 8 years in terms of adding to your portfolio. It's a good thing to learn. So thank you everybody for the kind words. I'm glad you guys got to learn Power BI at its core level, where it's useful, where you can use it, and hopefully, if not right now, at some point in the very near future, you'll find a use for it, and differentiate yourself from anybody else in your company, in your project, so on and so forth. What I'll do is I'll just stop screen sharing, and I'll close it out here. I'll share the resources with you guys. I'll share the recording and so on and so forth. And hopefully our paths will cross somewhere down the line, guys. Thank you so much for the questions. Love the interaction. Have a very nice rest of the day, rest of the week, and see you guys soon. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Thank you.